Doing very good. I'm Josh Mapes. I'm the founder of Overdrive Outdoors Facebook page. If anybody's heard of us, I don't know.
I talked to you last week.
Okay, perfect. They asked me, Scott got a hold of me. He is the head of the Great Lakes Predator Challenge, which is going to be held here February 6th, 7, and 8. He got a hold of me and offered me kind of a, hey, why don't you come do the seminar with DNR Sports. DNR got a hold of me, asked me for the same thing. I said, yeah, let's talk coyotes. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Out of everybody in the crowd, who all has already hunted coyotes? Okay, so about half of us. Okay, who since January 1st has seen a coyote? Okay, so everybody, who wants to come up here and talk besides me? You're all doing better than me. I do this with 3 kids and my wife at home and my full-time job. I get to do this about once every week. And that's on a good week. Usually my Saturdays and my Sundays are the days that I choose to go hunting. And my wife, let's give it all up, man, because she does everybody out here with a spouse or a girlfriend or a significant other that'll let me do it, I can't thank her enough for letting me do what I want to do. December was a good month for calling. I usually try to stay out of the woods. Mostly, if I got property on private property that I can hunt, it doesn't bother me so bad because state land, I don't like interfering with any deer hunts. Now I did go out and hunt some of my private spots. Deer season kind of died down. Doug knows that in the back. Deer season went kind of dead for us around the area. I just picked up back on coyote hunting. I did a lot of night hunting during December. The coyotes were responding, but they just weren't doing what we needed them to. I think I called in 4 during December, and that was about the end of December when I called in those 4. Everybody in here that's already coyote hunted, I'm hoping I can at least give you some kind of advice that might make you at least get a little bit more success. Has anybody killed one since January started? How many have you got?
Just one.
Just one? Okay, yeah, see it. I've been every weekend going out, but a lot of my stuff right now, especially with the tournament coming up.
Oh, I shot 2.
Oh, you're off in the corner. With the tournament coming up, I'm trying right now to mostly just scout my properties. We let a lot of them go kind of dead right now for the activity. I did last weekend go all kinds of tracks, and I did end up calling in 2 raccoons, which was a fun time all around too. But basically when I go out calling a property, on a new piece of property especially, I don't go out with the intent that, tomorrow morning I'm going to this brand new piece of property and I'm going to call them coyote. I don't know if I'm going to. A lot of that time is spent scouting. I'll do walk-arounds. If I find tracks, I might set up and do some calling. It doesn't always work, and sometimes it does. I've called in a couple on the first time out, and those were awesome hunts, but I don't expect it every time either. And everybody out there that's done it, especially in Michigan, 1 out of 10 maybe sets. If you see a coyote, you're doing pretty darn good in Michigan. And 1 out of 10 for me is extremely good. I just love to be out there chasing coyotes. I mean, it doesn't matter to me if I call them in every time, every 1 out of 10, every 1 out of 20, it doesn't matter to me. But, when I go to find a property, the main things I look for are cover and a food source and travel routes. That's what I look for in general. I'm looking for thickets. I'm looking for, is there rabbit tracks, is there turkey tracks? Coyotes love turkey, just like a lot of us do. And, if a lot of people that spring turkey hunt, they'll call them coyotes at the same time. And that's kind of what I look for. And when I say, travel routes, I mean, even if you've got just a fence row, if it's wooded, a coyote will travel it because to them that's cover enough that they can stay hidden in. Anybody that's done this enough knows that the coyotes will try as best they can to stay in some kind of cover until at least the cover of darkness comes around. Cover of darkness comes, I can call them off in wide open fields, 1 out of 5 sets with no problem. They're nighttime predators. They do their best work at night, and they know that they can be undetected unless we're out there with our lights on them in. When I go coyotes set up on a particular property, let's say there's a big thicket of woods with a fence line running down into a wide open field, you got to use everything you can to your advantage. I'm not going to go sit out in the middle of the field because a coyote, just like a deer, anybody in there that deer hunts knows that when a deer busts you in a tree stand, usually that deer is going to come back around every single time and look right up at you, and that's had to happen every year. It just happens, and that's the same with coyotes. Coyotes know structure, they know, there's a log out in that field, and a lot of times they'll use those as scent posts, property, like territorial markers, stuff like that. That's why trappers target them. A particular object in the field, trappers target for territorial reasons, scent marking posts, stuff like that. So that's what I look for. And when I'm talking territory, how many of us out here that call a lot of coyotes have ever had many times where they go out and, I got one howling at me, but he won't come out of the woods. How many have ever experienced that? Every time you go out, he won't come out of the woods. And you can either be dealing with a coyote that's educated or a coyote that is on the edge of that territorial boundary that he just won't cross. If you can't get him out of there, your best bet is to go closer to where he's at. If you can get him somewhere within shooting distance, that's all you're looking for. I've had it many times where one will be howling at me, and I'll go back a week later and it'll be howling at me, and I'll go back a week later and it'll howl at me. And it's like, okay, now for the first, I've been doing this 10 years, it took me about 7 years to figure it out, that you just might have to get closer because he doesn't feel comfortable crossing that imaginary line with coyotes.
As the season goes on, I assume it's more difficult because they get more savvy to hunting pressure.
More educated, yep. And that's one of the things that, with it being a growing sport, there's, okay, for instance, who all out here runs a Fox Pro call? Quite a few of us. And now you'll see that, especially on Facebook, where I do a lot of this business. Everybody's running a Fox Pro call. You ask, what call do you use? 9 out of 10 people say lightning jack. Okay, well, you've got 9 people out there running lightning jack. Every coyote in the area has heard it, and 7 out of 10 people will call them in. 6 out of those will miss their first shots, especially if it's the first coyote they call in. I missed my first shot, the first coyote I called in. Then you got a coyote that's heard that sound, and it knows, okay, after the last time I heard that sound, all of a sudden I got, they don't know what a gunshot is, but they know that something happened that wasn't right after they heard that sound, and they can tell that. They know that difference. One of the things I love about my Fox Pro call, I run a Fusion, it's got the ability to change the pitch of the sound. So even if I go out there and run lightning jack, I can turn it up to a really high-pitched jackrabbit sound that possibly nobody has ever played. And that one pitch difference in it is all it takes to change a coyote's mind. And, a lot of things that I see that I've been asked a lot too is, why should I go out and run jackrabbit in Michigan? There's no jackrabbits in Michigan. A coyote doesn't think like we do. And I've dealt with it many times. I, for the longest time, thought, that coyote's hearing that sound, he knows exactly that it's me out there. And that's not how it works. Coyotes don't use logic like humans do. They're not sitting out there thinking, hey, Tom, that sounds like a jackrabbit, and there's no jackrabbits in Michigan. They don't think that. They think that they hear the dinner bell going off, and that's all it takes to get them in sometimes. Right now, we're not having any luck with distress unless we're in. A lot of our guys are seeing more and more fox this year, and when you see fox tracks and you see coyote tracks, a lot of guys will just go use regular distress sounds. I like to howl, but if I'm in an area where I think there's fox, and right now, fox is open season, I'm not going to howl because red foxes will be killed by coyotes. They're not going to usually come running. Now, I've seen different cases where they have come in. I've actually got a buddy that called it a red fox with pup distress. Why? I don't know. I'm not the animal that I'm talking to. And that's one thing that everybody has to remember too. One of the questions I'm asked a lot is, on a mouth tone, I don't sound like a rabbit in distress. Well, that's in your mind. You don't sound like a rabbit in distress to yourself. but you're not talking to yourself. You're not trying to convince yourself it's real. You're trying to convince a predator that hears something screaming that there's food over here. That's all they need sometimes. When I go set up in an area, you know, I'm looking for, as I was saying earlier, coyotes aren't stupid. They like to use cover. Last year during the tournament, we called in our very first coyote of the whole hunt. We called in on the last stand about 15 minutes from here, and that coyote, I called for 25 minutes using nothing but distress. I thought that there was a good possibility there being a fox in the area, did nothing but distress. Finally, last minute, you know, last straw, I did a couple howls, and right here, right outside Kalamazoo, Michigan, I called it in with antelope in distress. Why? There's no antelope in Michigan, and that's what a lot of people ask me. Why would you use something that's not in Michigan? A coyote can't think like that. When I go to look at an area as in how am I going to set up, you know, I've seen many times people will send me, when people contact me, hey, how should I set up on this property, I usually ask, send me an aerial photo of how you're looking at the property. Show me where you can access it and where you think the coyotes are. And a lot of times what I'll see, and Josh knows this, when you go in and enter a property, for example, if you have a house that's on the north side, and that's the only property, the only access you have to this property, you think the coyotes are in a patch of woods on the east, and you're walking in with a wind that's coming from the west to the east, you're blowing the coyotes out of the area before you even start calling. And a lot of people, that's just something that's got to be realized. We play the wind as hard as we can. I use one of the wind puffers just to tell me, you know, and we'll park a mile away and say, okay, the wind's not even right for that spot unless we can find access on the opposite side of the block to enter. You don't want to allow your wind to blow into the area you think the coyotes are at. And I'm talking a lot about coyotes. I've never killed a fox by calling one in. I've only called in 4 in 10 years. They're a lot smarter than I am, so eventually I'll get there. But, you know, this is mostly just about coyotes. And it's all my experiences, and when I'm telling everybody my tips on Facebook, on, you know, on the phone, whatever, I don't want any of you to think, you know, next week you're going to go out and use some of these and be successful, because this is coyote. They're wild animals. We're not going to do, I get asked all the time, what call should I use today? I don't know. I can't call a coyote on the phone and say, what are you hungry for today? I have no clue. It's just going out and trying. When I set up, when I finally find that area I want to set up, a lot of people, even one of my friends today texted me a picture, he said, I had a coyote backdoor me 35 yards, I never saw him. He's been hunting for a long time, but if you're, by backdoor, what he means is that coyote came downwind and way downwind because it ended up behind him and he was using a knee collar to put upwind with him. When I set up, I'm going to put that electronic collar, and I use 99% electronic calls. I use a little bit of hand calls at the same time because I just want to, you know, break up the knot a little bit and be different. But when I set it out, I'll set that call, especially when I'm by myself, sometimes 75, 80, 100 yards out. That Foxbrook can reach that far. The remote is awesome on it, so I can reach that far out. That way, if a coyote decides, you know, let's say he's in the north woods, I know he's in the north woods, I'm setting up on the south side. That coyote, we want him to leave that north woods and come to us. Well, let's say you set up on a fence line 50 yards, 75 yards from the wood line, you're going to want that coyote to circle downwind and put him in front of you, not behind you. I've seen it a lot, I've done it a lot. I had 2 foxes a couple of years ago downwind me about 150 yards, and I didn't know they were there until I walked out and their tracks were on my boot tracks. It's happened to me. I've done it for 10 years and it still happens to me. I like to hunt with a partner for that particular reason. Safety, number 1, I like having somebody with me at all times in case anything happens. Number 2, I can have him this way looking at the backside while I'm facing the upwind. You don't get downwinded so badly when you have a second guy on a gun, or at least you're giving yourself, if you set up, let's say on a hillside, and you can see that downwind, it gives you that much better chances to kill a coyote that tries to circle you. And what I try to do too, I call a lot. Like let's say first and last daylight, I'll call wide open field. It doesn't bother me at all. I've called plenty of coyotes in the wide open fields. When it gets to be, the sun's high in the sky, I'll start moving in thick. One of my favorite spots is on a high ridge between two overgrown clear cuts on state land. And the thing about it is, those clear cuts are covered in these coyotes, but so is the hardwoods. They'll travel those hardwoods all day long and think that they're perfectly protected because of the cover. Trees to them are covered. I mean, wide open fields are not. If you can even get a field with, 2-foot tall grass, they'll consider that covered. You can call them out into it. But the way I set up in this particular ridge, I'll put my collar up 100 yards, I'll back off, and the coyote that comes out of that clear cut from where I know they come from, I've called in, I think 7 out of this one clear cut. They'll come down the edge of it, try a circle, which will put them right in front of me, but behind the collar. And that's one way to keep yourself from getting downwind.
Your collar's
Always, every time. The only time I really don't worry about it so much is at night. What I've learned to do, and there's a lot of controversy about the whole thing. I try to keep the collar sometimes 5 yards, sometimes it's right at my feet, sometimes it's 20 yards. I don't usually go more than 20, 30 yards at night. I put it straight out in front of me compared to where I think the coyotes are going to come from, because it makes it that much easier for me to catch eyes when they're looking at me. Now, a lot of guys use hand calls at night because they want the coyotes looking at them. At the same time, I don't, because while I'm blowing a hand call, moving my hands and looking around and changing everything, that coyote could be standing out there already watching me. And by the time I catch his eyes, it might be too late. So that's why I say I 99% of the time run an electronic collar. It makes it that much easier.
Is 100 yards your maximum range on that call?
No, I've never tried out past that.
Oh, okay. Just curious.
I just, for whatever reason, a lot of it has to do with I don't want to walk out so far. I've already walked in a mile through 3 feet of snow like last year on the tournament. We walked a long ways, and I just was lazy at that point. I don't like he was just saying, is it just that far? It's the remote could probably do better than that. I just don't want to keep on pushing into a piece that I think the coyotes are on, because every little bit farther you're going, if you break a twig, that coyote, a coyote can hear a mouse squeak at, I think it's like 300-400 yards. If he can hear a mouse squeak at that far, how far do you think he can hear that wind that you just broke? He heard it a long ways away, and we said it just the other day on the Facebook page, if your window breaks in your house and you're up in bed, you automatically think somebody just broke into your house, and that's kind of the way we try to think about the coyotes too. You got to be quiet when you're walking in. I've yelled at a lot of my partners before, especially first times out. Be quiet. Don't slam the door. Don't be walking just like you're going through, on a trot through the woods. You got to take it easy. It's a lot like deer hunting. I don't want them to be allergic to the fact that I'm there. That's kind of how I set up playing the wind. And when I say play the wind, watch your back door, I don't want anybody to think, okay, I always have to be facing the downwind side, because every time you'll do that, guess what? You're going to find out that the coyote came in from upwind and was just too stupid to care. I saw it 2 years ago. I called in a double the first time out. And the male circled way downwind. I saw him going through the woods, and the female came straight at me. She went home with me. He disappeared. And, and a lot of that has to do with age. Educated coyotes, they know. And the younger the coyotes are, even a 6-month-old coyote now is still basically a full-grown coyote, body-wise and everything. And if you're in a good area that hasn't been hunted, hasn't been pressured a lot, they might not know, okay, that's going to be something I need to go check the downwind side. Coyotes will oftentimes use their nose, much like deer will enter a field in a certain, I've seen it before with a deer will walk into a field with the wind only pointing one way, and when the wind switches, they get out of that field and go to the next one. Coyotes kind of do the same thing. They're going to use their nose for protection or for finding food. And the older they are, the smarter they are. For example, probably 3 years ago now, I did all hand calls. I just, for whatever reason, wanted to call in with a hand call so bad. I sat up on top of a big hill in the middle of a clear cut. I could see everywhere. and I was, I think, 45 minutes in, and it had just snowed the night before, so all the trees were covered in snow, and all of a sudden, this group of birds left the pine tree. I'm like, okay, you know, that's a little weird, so I kept on calling. A couple minutes later, that same pine tree, I just saw something move, and all snow fell off. So I got out my binoculars and looked, and there was a coyote that had snuck in the back side of it and laid underneath it to look out. And at the time, it was breeding season, so I hit the female estrus chirp, which if any of you have ever heard that, it's just a female whimpers almost slightly like a coyote, or like, you know, like a dog that's got its tail caught in the door or whatever, but it's more of a whimper. Just, I don't really know how to explain it. It's an estrus whimper. It's when they're being bred typically, and I hit that whimper again, and all of a sudden he come running out there with his tail twirling around, and he was so old that he had no teeth, half a tail, and no skin on his back. He was just an old, educated coyote, but it was the fact that I don't know how many people were using that call, you know, anything even similar in that area, that I was able to call him in. He just didn't know what it was called. And he didn't circle me downwind, and a lot of times what I've seen too when you're using vocals especially is coyotes won't try to circle as badly as they will when they think they're going to get a deal. When I use vocals, usually like right now we're not doing anything, we're not having any luck with them, so we're switching up our pattern a little bit, and I'd say 75% of my sets I like to start off with just an interrogation howl. Everybody out there know what an interrogation howl is? Anybody need to know? Just it sounds like a siren of a police car, basically. And all that's saying is, you know, here I am, where are you? And it's getting the other coyotes' attention around the area, saying it's getting the other coyotes. What I've always said is, try to put in a coyote's mind that something, put together a story for them, make them think that there's another coyote in the area, and then you can go into a distress zone and think, okay, now I've got this other coyote that just came into my territory, and now I'm eating my food. Now you got an African coyote that's not going to just come in for the food, it's going to come in for the territorial reasons too.
What would be
no, they'll still bark when they do interrogation hours. They play with it. You got foxglove. This is the female coyote long-howled call. I'm not going to turn it up and show you a while ago. That's just a sound like a siren. You want coyotes to answer that melody because it's not aggressive style howl. It's not a coyote saying, I'm over here watching the fight. It's a coyote that's looking for more coyotes. And they'll do that a lot also before they get together. I've heard it a lot living where I used to live. You'll hear one howl, and then a couple minutes later, there's a whole group of them out in the field howling. That's usually that one howl has got another one attention, and they got another howl. And then usually about they like whenever they're young, they'll break off into a separate one, two group. That's just what I've experienced. Why don't we run some video and I can kind of show this is but I'm trying to talk about some of these things a little bit. When you're watching these videos, I do all this stuff mostly by myself, so there's a lot of times where it's shaky or whatever else. So yeah, back to the wind and everything like that, I can't put it into anybody's head enough to be careful of how you're entering a specific area. You just don't want them to know you're there before you start calling, because a lot of times that coyote will be headed for the next county before you're even playing that revenue distress.
This time of year, what kind of call you start off like that?
Right now, since we haven't had any luck the way we've always done it, we're just doing straight distress. And I used to just howl. I love to howl, I love to give them the answer back, and right now we're just not having any luck with it, so we're switching up our technique. You have to switch your technique every once in a while. If it's not working, what are you going to ruin by changing something up? You know? If you're not seeing coyotes, you're not seeing coyotes. A lot of times it depends on the wind. I usually start low. If I do a howl, I don't care. I blow them right up. I'll put it on 38 out of 40 if I have to. What people say, you know, with the volume is when you go in, let's say you're going into tight quarters, and you turn on full blast rabbit stress, that coyote might think, you know, that's not right. For that rabbit to be screaming that loud, just that quick, right to my ear, you know. And I have personally witnessed it to know if it, yeah, for sure makes a difference. I like to start, if I'm starting with a rabbit, bird distress or whatever, I start about medium volume and then I work my way up. And a lot of times once I get up, all the way to the top, I'll back off after a couple minutes. And that's,
you're messing with the dog.
Yeah.
All the time and that.
Yep. Exactly. And that's why I like to hunt in the park. And that's another reason why I like using electronic collars rather than hand collars, because I don't like constantly having to blow air through that, move around, try to get everything's attention, because I've had it when I'm blowing on a call and I look over and that coyote's standing there pegged on me. I just don't like it. I like my electronic collars for those particular reasons. Now this hunt, for example, this hunt right here, the wind was blowing right to left. We're on a big hayfield. This is during the summertime. I had talked to these landowners many times during the off season, and they were having a problem with the coyotes, but they weren't having a problem that I could justify going out and calling them in the off season. Now during the off season, if you are the designated hunter to remove the problem coyote, you can go out and call coyotes. It's just, I didn't feel it was a good enough reason for me to be able to talk to the DNR officer and say, yeah, they saw it, and so there's a problem for them. It's not a good enough reason. This property, actually, they had seen one female with 14 pups on it. That's a lot of coyotes for one general area. Now, what we had is right left wind, this is the long hayfield, and then the hayfield went left, and it was all standing corn behind us. If you can call standing corn, if you can find standing corn right now, they're dynamite coyote calling spots. They'll hunt them for deer, they'll hunt them for rabbits, they'll hunt them for mice, and they'll use them as cover. Just like if you go to a deer drive, a lot of people deer drive on a cornfield because they hold up there. That's covered to a deer. The coyotes, it's covered to them as well. And they know that there's plentiful food in the area. We have more success calling out standing cornfields than I have anywhere else. And right now, you know, unfortunately, you can't find a lot of them. A lot of people didn't get to it early enough this year, too, so there still are some standing cornfields. Now, I just kept on switching the sounds here because after I had did the original howl, we had one howl back at us from the cornfield. And this was, I think, July 23, so it was only a couple days after season started. And I just kept switching sounds because I knew he was listening. He howled back, he was listening. You know, I didn't know at that point if I had ran around the area. I didn't know if he was coming. I didn't know if he was just standing there listening to me from the corner. I didn't know. So what you do, you know, if you got that feeling in your head, don't call for 15 minutes and stand up. I called particular spots. I just talked about this the other day with someone. I had one spot where it was loaded with tracks and I knew there was no way that there was no coyote listening to me. I called it for 58 minutes before I called 2 coyotes in, and then I thought they were way farther than they were in shot over the backs. So that's 58 minutes, you know, and a lot of people will say, well, what do? Do I get up after 20? I can't say what you want to do in a particular area unless I'm there and I can tell you what my gut says. I can't tell you what to do. When we've got plentiful tracks or we're hearing them, or, you know, the landowner had seen one earlier that day, I'll just keep on calling. If I think one is listening to me, you can't hurt anything by just keep on trying to get them out. If you got one listening, it's just finding that one button in his head that says, okay, go now. And we've seen it before on multiple hunts like this one, for example. I played rabbit, I played howls, I played pup distress, that's what I'm playing right now. And I just kept switching, and eventually, finally, somewhere it comes out.
You don't stop calling the dog.
I don't really.
You're just going to go through your moment.
Pretty much, yes. And that's another thing that a lot of people do differently. Some people call for 5 minutes, pause it for 5. The only time I ever pause is if I howl. Now, he didn't zoom in, the coyote running along the edge, you can't really see it. And this is another point too, if you got one running, and you don't feel safe or comfortable taking a running shot, a mouth howl, just with my mouth, my voice will oftentimes get him to stop. And if anybody notices in this video, when I took that first shot, there was no muzzle flash, and I missed that coyote. The second one, there was a muzzle flash, so I have a feeling that something was wrong with that particular bullet. I'm just making excuses. I missed too, you know. And I give everybody, or my friends that go and miss, I have a name for this now. It's named after one of my good friends, and then the first time I'm hunting this year, I called in a double and I missed them both with the shotgun. And they were close. Now, after I had missed that one, and this is where I want to talk about, you know, dominant howls. A lot of people will message me and say, I had one howl at me and I did a challenge howl. Why didn't he come out? A lot of times when you're challenging a coyote that's not a dominant coyote, that coyote isn't going to come running in to get his butt kicked. When I was a freshman in high school, I wasn't taking on the senior quarterback. I couldn't take him anyway, so why would I? A lot of people ask me that, why aren't they coming? Well, a lot of times you're challenging a coyote that isn't dominant. He doesn't want to come fight, and he's probably running across his neighbor's field now.
Hey Josh, when you get a challenge call back, is it pretty much game over at that point in time?
A challenge howl? No. A warning howl? I've never been able to call in any. Now, if anybody ever heard one warning howl that you know is a warning howl? A warning howl, now this one, okay, pause this thing, will you?
Sorry.
No, you're fine, you're fine. The last video on here, we'll get to it too before the night's over. How are we doing right now? 7. Okay. A warning howl and a challenge howl are almost identical. The only way I know the difference is because 9 times out of 10, a coyote that is challenging me will challenge me 2, 3, 4 times and then shut up. A warning howl, I've had a warning howl bark at me for over an hour on a particular set. They just won't shut up because they're alerting everything else. Hey, something's wrong here, something's not right. And on a couple of those, one in particular, I called in right after my brother came home from the Marines. I called in for him. He was adjusting his turret on the left-hand side, trying to get the clarity of the scope right, and all he was doing was adjusting his windage the whole time. He was used to how it was in boot camp for him, so he missed that coyote. It ran out to the back of the field and started warning howling at us. I called it. Somehow, I don't even know what sound I was playing. I think it was pup distress because my fox was set up to do fox bang when the shot goes off, turn pup distress. That coyote came to the back of the field, went up on a high rise, and my brother missed it again. And for 45 minutes, we followed that coyote through the woods, and he always stayed just, 100 yards farther than we could see howling at us, barking at us, and howling. And I've never honestly been able to get one to come back to me that I know is warning howling at me. A lot of guys will say, go stalk them, or just keep trying, because you never know if they're going to come running back or not. And, that's one thing a lot of people will ask me too, why aren't they coming and how do I know when to stop? Well, if you got one that just won't shut up, he's warning you. He's not challenging you, he's warning you that something's not right. And he's not usually going to come running right back to that same source of sound. Go ahead, play it back. Now, after I missed that first one, I had one challenge and howling from the same cornfield. So I started challenging him back. This was summertime, they were territorial. You got pups out, you got females that are protective, and the males are kind of at the same time territorial and protective of the area as well. So I started challenging him back, and a couple minutes later, from across the road, right next to us, this one had come in. It wasn't even the same one I was howling at. And I hit him once, turned to look down towards where the other one was howling at us, and I turned back and I thought there was a third one in the field where he was actually standing up. So I took him out, and then, this one will just go kind of dead after this. But I ended up killing 2 coyotes that day. This was summertime. One thing about summertime howling right after the season started is you got uneducated coyotes and you got pups. And, you know, they'll all come running in because they're not used to hearing sounds for the past 3 months. You know, they're hungry, they're territorial, and they're protected. Pup distress is deadly sounds that are territorial during, you know, pup season. Right at the beginning of the season, I can run out and just play pup distress. And my best stand, I called in 7 in one stand. And I didn't know what to do with myself, so I never even pulled the trigger. And, you know, I see that a lot too, you know, why aren't they coming to these particular sounds right now? That's where learning, you know, the different seasons. You got the breeding season, you got territorial seasons where they want to fight rather than breed. Then you got the seasons where all they are is hungry, they don't care about anything else. And that's where you kind of run down the list of, okay, what time is it now? It's, you know, it's almost February. February, if you can learn how to howl, owls are going to be deadly in February. They always are. And that's why I, you know, read magazines, look online, watch YouTube videos, message us, call me, I don't care. I'll try to help you the best. And like I said, I don't want anybody to think that I'm a professional coyote caller, because there's going to be guys out there that do better than me, and I'm still learning at the same time. So now this hunt, my friend Kevin had actually called this location not long, I think a week beforehand. We had seen 3 coyotes at one time. They were off on the right side, and when he went to take the shot, right behind him was a building, and he wasn't going to take that unsafe shot. On our way in, the wind was blowing from here, from those woods out back towards the road where we parked, and this is just a wide open field. This is a deep ravine here, and behind the deep ravine is another field, and then it's another wood line. So the wind was blowing from where we thought they were going to be out towards where we had parked, and our intention was to get them to come out into the field either side of us to circle downwind. And as you'll see here, it worked exactly like we wanted it to. There was fresh tracks going in that we knew because it had snowed, I think, that morning, and we showed up right before dark that night, and there was fresh tracks in the snow from that morning, so we knew they weren't very old. And that's another question I get too. Why do I see fresh tracks and I don't have any coyotes coming? I don't have them responding, they're not coming to call, I don't see them. You got to remember that a coyote can travel like 7 or 8 miles overnight, and I see fresh tracks right here in the morning. It could be, you know, 3 counties over by that point, by the time I called. So, as I said a week before, we had called in 3 at this same spot. We got 3 here. He lip squeaks to try to get him to come closer, and the back one took off running. He already had heard that sound. I took the one on the left, he took the one on the right, and I was trying to get the second one running out of the field. So that one worked good, and that was, I think, a 43-pound male, really nice and furred up. This is March, mid-March sometime. But at that point still, we hadn't even gotten to the stress on yet. That's why I'm saying if you can learn how to howl, owls are deadly. And, you know, especially during the tournament, I'm hoping that we can go run out and run owls. I'm trying to think of a particular example to give you guys. When let's say I go out and I do an interrogation howl and I get the answer back, what do you do then? And I've had that question come in too. People have actually texted me from their calling location, okay, now I'm talking to an owl. I can't really play with their mind. That's what I try to do. You got to run. And I think it was Almore from Foxborough on TV a couple weeks ago said you got 4 different things that you got to run with. You got to run with their territorial side, their hunger side, their protective side, and there was one other thing, I don't recall what it was, but that's kind of the list we go down. If you're not getting them to come to howls, you know, I'll howl for 20, 25 minutes, and then I'll go to distress if nothing shows up in that 25. After distress, if I do that for 10, 15, okay, now what do I do? Do I change the pup in distress, or do I just call it a day, you know? And a lot of times, if you don't call already, I will never, ever end a coyote stand without playing pup distress, because you just never know if that's going to turn in to be protective, or if that's going to turn in as to, okay, there's a fight going on my territory, you just never know. And that's what I love about it so much. It's still, for me, doing it for 10 years, it's still a learning game for me. And when I quit learning about them, it's probably the time that I'm going to give up on it, because it's not going to be any fun anymore. It's not like deer hunting. You know, I try to say this a lot too, you know, when you go deer hunting, you figure out a piece of property, you can set a stand, and 100% of the time you can tell me on a given season, I'll kill a deer this year. It's not the same with coyotes, because that coyote might use that property one year and have, some reason he leaves that property. It doesn't mean he's going to be there for the next year. And that's one thing, constant scouting. I scout, Google Maps is one of my biggest things. If I can get property or find state land, I use Google Maps. It tells me where the woods are, where the creek beds are. Right now, if you can find a frozen creek bed, they're using them as highways right now. I just found this on a property I got up north this past weekend. We found a deep creek bed, and we didn't find a single track through almost 500 acres that we had walked that day. We hit that creek bed, and it was a highway back and forth. It's quick travel, it's quiet travel, and with the creek bed being below the bank, a coyote could run that and nobody would ever know they were there. And now that I found that, I know where I can go set up next time to put myself in a better position. I will one line call and hoping one comes out. This one is another good example of how to use the wind. The wind was blowing from that cornfield out towards the road where I parked. I walked in, and this coyote was feeding in the field mousing as I walked in. This was another summertime coyote. Not a great video. I was supposed to have 2 people with me that day, and neither of them woke up. So I just set the camera on the tripod, hit play, and kept going with it. If I would have walked in, like a lot of guys tell me they do, with the wind at their back, this coyote would have smelled me before I even left my car, and I would have never had this opportunity. This was another time where it had been a property owner that called me and said, we need somebody gone. And as soon as they start finding out that you're not helping them with their problem, they're going to find somebody that will or that can. And that's one of the things that I try to do my best at. And if the wind's not right for your particular setup, either find a different access point or move on to the next property. It's better to leave the property and come back when the wind's right than to go in and educate coyotes. Because once they get educated, they're harder to call in. Like I said, it's not very good footage, but it's just another one now for me. And these videos all serve a purpose for me at the same aspect of, I can't stress enough that the more property you get, the better off you are. Whether it's state land, private land, whatever you can get, you go in to these same locations day after day after day after day. It doesn't matter even if you've missed one, seen one, nothing. The coyotes are here over and over and over and over. They're going to catch on to you eventually. And that's another thing I'll tell you too. I don't care if I haven't called that spot in a month. I'm still going to go find 50 yards down the tree line a different bush to sit under, because you never know how long ago they remember that call. And if they hear it from the same location every time you go in, that's how you educate coyotes, and that's how you don't put any down. And when it's like me, where I go out and help these landowners that have problems, if I'm not, like I said, if I'm not putting them down, they're going to find somebody that will. And he needs property. This one, the wind was blowing right to left. Every time I called this property prior to this, I walked right past all this, all the way to the back of the property where the creek bed was. There was always tracks here in the sand. So this time, I just was feeling lazy again, trying to do something differently. I walked in, played the wind, figured if they were in the right-hand side, they'd have to cross the opening to get to me. And pay attention on stand on this one. My dad had just sent me a text message saying that he had missed one. And I just answered him back and looked up, and that coyote was eyeballing me from a wide open field, right, staring 15 yards away from my decoy. I'm probably never going to do that again, because that was almost impossible to get into position for a shot and take it while I had just put my phone down and he already was staring. So that was another one, same situation, summertime. He came into a rapid distress. That's what I'm saying, during the summer, all these different times of the year, I can't tell you, nobody can tell you. I don't think you would ever find someone that can say it's May, go out and call using rapid distress and kill coyotes. I can't tell anybody that. I don't have anybody to think I can. It's all up to the particular animal. On a given day, let's say, I've had pizza 3 days in a row, and I want to have pizza on the 4th day. That's kind of the same thing I kind of think with coyotes. And when I say that, I mean, you can go out and play rabbit, and all of a sudden you're not seeing anything again. Change it to chicken. change it to turkey, change it to bird. You just never know what's going to trigger you never know what's going to make them come running to you. That's all I can't stress it enough. I've told it many, many times. Everybody I hunt with, I've told them, you know, we're not seeing anything after 10 sets. It's time to change things. And it might not even be 10 sets in the same location, but, you know, out of 10 sets, if you're not seeing anything, like I said earlier, what do you have to lose to change it up? You're not seeing anything, you're not seeing anything. Now, if you're seeing coyotes, run with it. You know, keep running with it until it quits working, and then change it up again.
Any cat calls on that? Kittens?
I do have kitten stress. I actually have screaming monkey out there too. And that's kind of the thing, you know, like I said earlier, everybody running these same collars. You know, you got Primos collars, you got Western Rivers, you got Fox Pro. They all come preloaded with the same sound. If you don't try to be a little bit differently, your productivity will go down. And I've seen it many times, and that's why I have all these weird sounds, you know. I have screaming piglets on them. You just never know what's going to trigger them. And especially if everybody, like I said earlier, is going out and hitting the same button on their Fox Pro, those coyotes all in that area are already hurt. And I can't stress that enough. It's one thing that I try to make, you know, even more so than the wind direction. Try to be different. This is the Muskegon. This was beginning of March. And this is a good example of howling to get them in. I had only been on stand, I believe it was 6 minutes. That's how I started. This wasn't just a single coyote howl. This was actually, I believe it's coyote pair howls. At the same time, it's territorial and breeding season. Coyotes out there hearing me thinking there's a male and a female. And if there's a territorial male out there, he's thinking, okay, what's going on here? Where I am? This is my territory, what's going on? So I had done those howls. I think it was a minute or two went by, and I answered them back again. And that's one thing we'll try to do also. Just because you play one howl, you know, I'll play a female howl, and a couple minutes later I'll play 9 times out of 10 a pup howl. Just a pup response, because that'll trigger an aggressive male to come in thinking, no, your 6-month-old pup isn't getting my female. And that's one thing that we try to do as well. You just got to try to, like I said, get in their head to either irritate them or make them think that they're going to eat. So I answered it back with a group again. And then at that point, after these howls were done, I was messing around trying to get some video tape of a blue heron that was flying over me. I think it would be a good video. I had something about this morning, I wasn't feeling that confident, and I don't know why. Sometimes if confidence is key in everything, you know, if I'm not confident that my call is going to work, I'm not going to run that call. If I'm not confident that my ammo is going to put it down, I'm not going to run it. So I'm videotaping this heron, I look down and that coyote's running from right to left along the lead line. I don't know if you can even see him. Right there on the right, just barely. He caught my wind, and immediately, after 10 years of doing this, I knew, okay, he ran off already, wasn't hurt, and hit pup distress, and he came barreling right back over the hill. Now, even my 4-year-old comments on this video, because I let him get by the camera. He's coming right at me. So I let him get by the camera. My 4-year-old watched this with me a week or so ago, and he said, Dad, you're supposed to shoot them before they get out of the camera. I didn't know he was a professional at this, but apparently I didn't start thinking a little more out there. So you don't see a whole lot, but that's an example of how it's worked for us. And I don't care what time of year it is. You know, right now we're not having a lot of luck howling, but at the same time, you just never know when it will work.
What did you use after you caught your wind?
After he caught my wind, that was with my old Hellfire, my Fox Pro Hellfire. I hit the auxiliary button, which turned into pup distress, and I mean, he just turned right around and came back. And if you could tell from the beginning of the video, when he came back over the hill in the field, he was staring right at me. He already knew something wasn't right, but you just, sometimes you can make them stupid, sometimes you can't.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
10 minutes. You want to fast forward to the last hunt?
Hey guy,
Yes,
what
sir.
I've used, actually, I've actually went along with Gray Fox distress,
Yep.
pop distress.
Yep.
Like you mentioned, it's almost like a light switch in their head. On the box goes with Gray Fox distress, and 9 times out of 10 I hit that. It's almost like they're sitting in the woods and they're coming out of the.
You call it Coyote with a Gray Fox distress?
Yeah, more than I do with the pup distress.
Roger that.
This one right here, what do we do? Okay, so this was the night hunt that we did, and when we talk about night hunt, you know, it's, a lot of people will not use lights at all. They'll go out with the moonlight, they'll go out with the snow on the ground, because at that point you can see those animals coming across these wide open fields. I don't trust myself enough in the dark with a wide open field in moonlight to be able to tell you that's a coyote coming in, not a fox. I use Predator Hunter Outdoors lights. They sell them here. You can get them online too. I use a red light, and I use their headlamp. Their headlamp I use for scanning for eyes. This is the one I was talking about earlier that I had given my buddy some crap about missing, and I went out and had 2 of them come 10 yards behind me, and I missed them both with a shotgun at close range.
Yeah, so you're doing lights. You keep them on the whole time?
Nope, when I'm doing lights, what I've learned to do, I used to keep them on all the time, but I want to make more than 1-2 stands without having low batteries. And I used to have those problems all the time on the lights that I used to use. Now, since I've started running Predator Hunter Outdoors, I scan with the headlamp, and it's every 15-30 seconds. I'll scan back and forth for eyes, I'll put it down. Scan back and forth, I'll put it down. I don't know personally, and I don't know if anybody can tell you for sure if the light affects a coyote. Everybody has their own opinion on colors. I used to use the green light, and I never called it a coyote with a green light to tell you if the green light affects a coyote. I've used red with success. That last time you saw, that was actually with the red, and that coyote, for whatever reason, he just didn't want to commit. But he wasn't running through the hills like he was worried about something. He just didn't care about what was going on. We had howled at the beginning of that storm. And then he came in with jackhammer distress on, and then he went back into the corn. We were calling it an uncut cornfield. I hit a different sound, he came right back out. Walked the edge of it, went back in. I hit a different sound, he came back out. If you got him doing that, you can either keep playing with it or you can take the shot. So we elected to take the shot because we were calling him in and out of that cornfield for almost 10 minutes. It was, you know, to that point where I said, I don't know if we're going to get him across this field. He was shooting a new 17 caliber rimfire B-mag. It's a 200-yard gun when you know that gun. And it was 175 yards. We thought we heard something flopping. We did. It was a miss. But you look back to your question. I don't scan anymore full time. I used to, but now I've just gotten good enough with the lights to know just scan real quick, put it down. That's all I do. A lot of guys do it differently, and that's what I'd say. All the advice I can give, it's just a starting point, and run with it. If you can make it better, do so. These are just going to be some still photos from some of our hunts. Jordan, you had mentioned gray fox distress get coyotes in. I've seen that a lot too. Gray fox and red fox. Gray fox can climb trees, if I'm not mistaken. And red fox can't. Red fox are a prime target of coyotes if they're in the same area. That's why a lot of times when we see coyote and fox tracks together, it's going to be a coyote and a gray fox, because the gray fox can actually escape the danger that the red fox can't. And the red fox can't outrun a coyote either. Another point I want to hit on, a lot of guys message me and say, I found a den site. What do I do with it? Right now, nothing. Just remember where it's at. It's not active right now. Coyotes only use the dens when they are having pups. They'll use them about a couple weeks before they are ready to actually give birth to the pups. And then at the end of pupping season, when those pups are old enough to slide a coop, those dens will go abandoned. You might find one right now. It's good to keep that information with you so you know, okay, if I'm going to go out there and call these during the summer when they're I can go back towards that den location, there should be coyotes at least somewhere around. And that's what we try to do too, when we'll handle knows where there's a den site in a fence line. So I just know where to start off with that information. I don't try to go in there right now and call them coyote out of the den because they're not in it. Fox will den up, red fox especially will den up, they'll den up right in a wide open field. If you ever see big dirt clumps in the middle of a wide open field, that's usually a red fox. And like I said, I'm not a fox expert for sure, I've never put one down. All the fox on here have been my team members. So yeah, I mean, are there any questions before we go over it?
So when you're running your call, I got a bunch of questions.
Go for it. I got time and a phone number
What
too.
kind of, like, your howls? I mean, you just hit that and you're letting it, like,
Time out.
yeah, I mean, like the single female howl or
Yep.
whatever is on the call.
Yep.
You hit it, and then, because your remote always, when you turn on the remote, it's always in repeat.
Correct.
So you just leave that on?
Not when I do howls. When I do howls, I'll howl with the interrogation howl especially, I'll do 2, 3 of them, and then I'll mute it and I'll just sit back and wait.
And what are the interrogation howls? Because there's,
Like a serenade.
I mean, you got,
Serenade is 2 coyotes at the same time. I can play one for you here. It's pretty similar to it, at least. It's not actually called the serenade. Serenade is 2. This is my vision of the serenade. There's 2 coyotes in there howling back and forth. That's what they call
is
serenade.
that coyote pair? Is that what that
This
is?
is coyote pair.
Always learn.
And that's actually what that one that ran out of frame before I killed him came into. And that was 6 minutes of nothing but howls. And all I did was answer these back with another pair. So that coyote, he was a dominant male and was really cut down teeth from his years.
So, I mean, you just let that run, I mean,
I let it run one time. And then I
you
used
just one, and then you mute.
Yep, and that's what we do with howls. The interrogation howl, as I mentioned earlier, it's just a, hey, I'm here, where are you kind of howl. And I'll sit back and wait 5, 10 minutes, sometimes even longer if I have them answer me. At least I know they're listening to me. And February, March, and April, if you get them to howl back at you at an interrogation howl, just sit back and watch for a little bit, because we've had them come 500 yards away from us in the field just to look. We've had them that triple. They came into less than 10 minutes of just female howls, 3 at a time, I think, was all we played. And then we just sat back and waited, and they come walking right in. And that's, with howling, that's what we do. You don't want to just keep on letting it run,
Right.
because how often do you hear that actually happen? You don't.
What's the yodel?
The yodel howl on the Fox Pro?
Yeah, what is
That-
that? Is that a?
That's a female who is basically ready to be bred, or being kind of followed real closely, like, when your lab gets with the neighbor's lab, and you're barking back and forth. It's kind of the same thing. And then you got the estrus chirps. The estrus chirps is like
That's not on there, is it?
yeah, it is.
It comes with fusion, comes with it.
Yep.
What's it called?
That is, I have female yodel howl that came on it, and then I also have coyote female whippers. That's this. And that's pretty much when they're already in the process of breeding. And I've had males come on into that because, I don't know how else to put it. You don't want somebody else breeding.
Jealous boyfriend?
Yeah.
Just get it and let it run one time, and then you.
That call, I'll let it run for 5-10 minutes sometimes, just because it's not aggressive sound and it's not an unnatural sound for, I don't know if you ever seen any of the PBS specials or anything about like wolves or coyotes that breed. They kind of stick together for a long time and they're whimpering the whole time. That's one thing that I try to push when, do the research, especially if you can watch YouTube videos or whatever, and you'll figure out how to use these more without scaring everything away. Like I said, rarely ever challenge owls because I just don't want the younger ones to go run down. Interrogation owl is my go-to, and then when the breeding season starts, and you know when breeding season starts because you start finding pairs of tracks going in rather than just one crossing block, and some of those tracks will have blood in them. You know, it's time to start calling. And that's about all I've got for you all tonight. Any other questions? Go ahead.
When you're running through your distresses,
Yep.
okay, you're playing lightning jack, okay, you don't want to dip with your remote. So it's a calm day,
Yep.
you got it set at 20s in the middle, 0 to 40. So you got it set at 25. Just leave it at 25 and let it run for 30 seconds, and then you'll change to a different distress
No.
right away, or what?
No, I will, typically each one of my distress calls will run for roughly 10 minutes at a time. And
Over and over and over.
yeah. I think that's for you.
You're good.
Distress, I don't think it bothers them, and that's, a lot of people, I've seen it all over the place. Okay, well, that coyote knows that rabbit's only got a lung this big. How's he screaming out there for 10 minutes in full volume? Again, they don't have that logic. They just hear the sound. That's all you're trying to do is put it in their brain. Something's over there for dinner. They're not sitting there thinking, I can't hear a rabbit. It's been screaming way too long. They don't know that. My distress sounds, I'll run them 10 minutes at a time, and then without even muting it, pausing it, anything, I'll hit the next distress.
Just go right to
Yep.
the next one.
Yep, and that's back to the logic. They
Don't
don't.
do a lot of woodpecker.
Yep. Yep, that's exactly back to the logic. They don't know. They're not sitting there thinking, why is there a bird howling? It was just a rabbit.
You're just trying to find a sound that they want to hear.
Yep, and that's one thing even I've been told talking to my buddy down in New Mexico that does this for a living every day. He says, Josh, you're trying to make coyotes smarter than they really are. They're trying to think, you know, it doesn't sound natural. It doesn't matter what it sounds like to us. It matters what it sounds like to the predator. And all you're trying to do is make them think that there's food over there, and they're not sitting back thinking anything else about it other than, okay, do I need to go try to smell what the sound is, or do I go kill it? That's all I can say about that. I mean,
Do you use the auto volume on the car?
no, I don't. There's some like presets on there that are automatically set to do the auto volume. I just, like I said, sometimes it depends on the terrain I'm hunting. If I'm hunting, like let's say back to my thick ridge with two thick overgrown clear cuts, I'm not going to start on 40 because I don't want a coyote over there 100 yards just all of a sudden getting spooked out. I'll start real low and then I'll work my way up, and then when I get to full volume, I'll back it back down after a minute or two. Just to get that sound out there a little further and then back it off. And one thing that we've also done, when we got coyotes coming in, and we've seen it many times where they're coming in a dead run and then they'll slow down or they'll stop. You can either keep trying to get them in, or one thing we've had for sure work is just mute it. And all of a sudden that sound's gone, they're looking for it, and then the hardest part about it is at that point they're looking back and forth trying to find where it is. And if you do something stupid with your hand or with your gun, they caught you. That's why a lot of people at that point will hit, like I have 4 presets out here that I can hit, and one of them is mouse squeaks. They can come running to a rabbit and stop, and you hit mouse squeaks, and they're hearing it come right back. It's just keeping their attention sometimes is hard to do too. I've seen videos of coyotes coming running full blast across these prairies from a mile away that they can see them, and 500 yards out, they're running straight at him, and all of a sudden he turns his head and goes and catches the mouse and walks away. You got to keep their attention. Coyotes they will take food. I'm trying to think of the word on there.
Opportunists?
Yes, opportunistic animals. They won't just kill like a wolf or like they rock, like a lot of people have said. They'll kill when they need to, and I can't say that they'll stash them like a cougar or a wolf would do, but they know where that food is and they'll come back to it to finish it off. That's another thing that I do. If you ever know where you can find a deer carcass that's been dead or somebody dumped or whatever, on my thing, I go back every week and I check it. If the coyotes are finally on it, they're probably not going very far from from it because they want that food, and then they don't have to keep traveling miles overnight to find it. That's one of my biggest things that I've ever done to be successful calling is I'll find, let's say you find a group of tracks that it just looks like the coyote traveling every day. One end of that's going to have food and the other's going to have cover, 9 times out of 10. If you can find what is at each one, you know, okay, that's a morning spot that I want to go try on that food because they're probably eating on it. And then you go back towards the bedding cover, and that's where you go in the middle of the day. You know? And that's what I do. When it's thick, I call on the thick stuff. Or when it's very light out, warm, middle of the day, they're not using these open fields as much. I'll pick up the shotgun, I'll go thick. And I've called them in at noon, 2 o'clock before. You know, it's all about location. Any other questions? Anyway, I got plenty of time, so like I said, we're going to get kicked out of it.
I know it differs for your location, but what do you use for your gun most of the time?
My 243. 9 times out of 10 it's with me. I've got to the point now where I carry that over my back and I carry this over my front because a lot of times when I go in thick, I want to be able to have a farther shot if they hold up. But at the same time, the last time I ever allowed myself to just walk in with a rifle, I had one at 3 feet within 10 seconds and I couldn't find it in my scope. I'm not going to do that again. It's 2 guns for me at a time unless I have partners. You know, for the tournament, for example, we're going to have 3 gunners. One of them's always going to have a shotgun. Whether you're carrying a rifle and a shotgun, I don't care. And that person can cover the back door, cover the down inside, you know, sit 20 yards away. You're going to be less chances of having one run off educated and smelled you, caught on you. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, all my kills are done with the rifle. I've got 1 shotgun kind of down, and, you know, ever since I bought a good shotgun for specifically coyotes, I haven't held it 10 yards ever again. So yeah, I mean, my rifle goes with me every day. Unless it's at the dark, you got to follow the rules, no buckshot, no rimfire shotgun, no slugs. Anything else?
So you're going to make a lightning jack for 5 minutes straight?
I'll tell you one thing right now, I won't touch lightning jack anymore. Yes. I'll run
I'm saying you run that for 10 minutes.
Yep.
And when you start out at a lower volume, you go up and you come back down and then just let it run and then you go right from that and hit something else after 10 minutes.
Exactly.
And hit something and you let that run for 10 minutes.
That's what I do.
And then, okay.
And it's everybody's, you're gonna eventually find out your own style of doing it. With hand calls, you know, people blow for 3-4 minutes and then they stop for a couple minutes and they go back to it. People have success with that. You know, it's just my style. I want to always have something to think of to be able to move in on.
How much is the, you like the deal?
The decoy?
The decoy?
I'm not sure. Adam can tell you what they sell.
They're usually under like $50.
You like using it.
I do, and I used to run a different decoy, but I like having a remote access. I don't want it to run all the time because then you just kill batteries for no reason, and batteries aren't cheap, especially if you buy them rechargeable. You only got to buy them once. I like just having that one on there for remote purposes specifically because I can activate it by hitting the auxiliary button.
Right. When you want it, I mean, when you do that, you see when it will come.
The only time I do it is if I don't care if he's already running at me. All he's doing at that point is hearing the sound. He's not seeing what's coming with him. Let me give you an example of a deer this year. I had one coming and I grunted at him and he came in and he could see a mile and no deer in sight that were grunting when he turned around and never saw a deer again. That's the same with a decoy. When I see a coyote coming, I'll hit that decoy. Then it gives him something to lock on to. Okay, now the sound has a source and that source isn't you when you're using an electronic call. That's what I like to do. And they actually sell those fox jacks here. I know you have fox jacks on the shelf, so fox goes and everything. They got the lights, everything here. So, I think anything else, anything in particular, or talk later, I don't care. So, everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for being on. Hopefully, somebody can at least go out and say, hey, your voice actually worked, because it's not working for me. So. You guys all have a good night.